Good morning. So my name is Eric Perret. I'm a member of the Seattle Interactive Conferences Advisory Board, and it's our pleasure to welcome you to the conference this morning. Good morning. And today we have a great speaker here, and Sanaz Ahari. I specifically requested to introduce Sanaz because we worked together way back in the foggy dawn of Interactive. So you're in for a treat. Please welcome from Google, Sanaz Ahari.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Eric. I haven't seen Eric in years, and I was just so shocked to see him. I was like, oh my God, you get to introduce me and you actually know me. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending the Seattle Interactive Conference. I know that the mayor is speaking now, so I'm very honored that you chose to come to my session. There's a great lineup of full-packed agenda, lots of sessions, panels, etc. And today, I'm going to be talking to you about viewable impressions and advertising. All right. Okay, since we're going to spend the next hour together, I want to start with a quick little background about me. I'm Sanaz Ahari. I'm a product manager at Google, and I work on brand advertising, and more specifically on brand measurement. So I live and breathe metrics and tools for enabling advertisers to effectively measure their campaigns online and be able to optimize in real time. Prior to Google, I was at Microsoft, and during my whole tech career, I've been really lucky enough to work on a lot of bleeding-edge technology. And I have to say, right now is one of the most exciting times to be in ad tech. We're at a moment where there's innovations across many, many fronts, between crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, mass customization, wearables, mobile, everything. We're just all at the early stage. And the world as we know it will hardly seem recognizable in the near future. So I'd like to start in the abstract today, a topic that's usually reserved for neuroscience. We won't be discussing biology, though. We'll take a slightly different approach. I'd like to think about the human experience through our physiological capabilities. An experience we all share, a commonality that defines our very existence and yet goes mostly unnoticed. In particular, how we sense the world around us and how this is evolving. And of course, why this all matters. So our senses are defined as physiological capabilities that provide data for perception. A fairly pedestrian definition for something that is quite extraordinary. A set of capabilities that are responsible for our very existence. The set of capabilities that deeply influence our very being, that have shaped the human experience, that govern and facilitate every interaction with the world around us. This, of course, has not gone unnoticed by marketers. Our senses are not easily defined as one might think. There are many stimuli, some might define as senses. The most commonly accepted senses are hearing, taste, smell, touch, and of course, sight. Sight is undoubtedly the most important sense we possess. More than 50% of our neural tissue is devoted to this single sense. Since ancient times, sight has been regarded as the most important sense. René Descartes, the father of modern philosophy, he's perhaps best known for his philosophical statement around, I think, therefore I am. He had this to say: the entire conduct of our lives depends on our senses, among which that of sight being the most universal and most noble. There is no doubt that inventions which serve to augment its power are the most useful which could exist. It's pretty amazing. He was perhaps foretelling Google Glasses in 17th century. So it's no surprise that brand advertisers have found the holy grail of advertising through the visual medium. In 2012, almost 95% of advertising spend was through visual communication, with a lion's share of it being on TV. We've all heard the term the mind's eye, but what does this mean? Our mind's eye and our visual memory is our ability to experience visual mental imagery, ability to see things with the mind, and it's inextricably linked to our sight. It is the cognitive system that forms the basis of advertising. While modern advertising is a multi-sensory experience, it is what we see that creates our first and lasting impressions. So let's talk about first impressions, or rather, just impressions. In a mere millisecond, you have formed what we commonly refer to as a first impression. We've all formed first impressions of each other today. We unconsciously comprehend using our senses and determine whether we like something or not. Scientists refer to this as the cognitive unconscious. 1 millisecond is a mere thousandth of a second. Let's put this in perspective. 3 milliseconds is the wing flap of a common housefly. 8 milliseconds is the speed of the standard camera shutter speed. 41.67 milliseconds is one video frame. And a whopping 100 to 400 milliseconds. That's the average length of a mere blink of an eye. So in the mere blink of an eye, we have formed dozens of impressions. That's amazing. I'm not a neuroscientist, but that's pretty extraordinary. Our cognitive unconscious is literally flooding us with impressions that we can't control and are hardly aware of. So let's think about some first impressions in a practical sense. What about the moment you met your wife, your husband, your partner? The first time you laid eyes on your child? Or the first time you saw your object of desire? Certain moments in time captivate us. They capture our attention and leave us an indelible impression. While we can't recreate the breadth and depth of emotional experiences when we're in love or when we see our child for the first time, we can certainly aspire to better understand how to leave a worthwhile impression. We can aspire to transition our messaging from our unconscious to the conscious. From feelings to thought, to intent, to preferences, to loyalty, and ultimately to action. From a mere brand impression to purchase, to brand loyalty. The tools are only emerging to accomplish this. Let's talk about history of advertising for a moment. Some would say that advertising dates back to the earliest civilizations and consider political campaigns found in Pompeii and Arabia advertising. So the first ad was perhaps as far back as 4000 BCE. The tradition of wall paintings dates back in 4000 BCE. But now on to more modern times. While different forms of advertising existed in ancient times, apparently, the more modern forms of advertising started around 1880. There was changes in manufacturing. Everything from soap to canned foods to cigarettes. We knew how to manufacture and create things in much higher quantities. And at this point, brands wanted new ways to reach people and influence their purchasing decisions. National advertising of branded goods emerged. Large department stores like Macy's in New York, Marshall's in Chicago, they were trying advertising. And even in rural areas, there were mailing catalogs for different things like sewing kits. So the estimated spend in 1880 was around $200 million. Fast forward to 1920, where it had grown to $3 billion. Historian Roland Marchand, the author for Advertising the American Dream, he pointed out that advertisements sought to adjust Americans to modern life, a life lived in a consumer society. Given the importance of our sense of sight, it's really no surprise that marketers immediately grasped the power of TV. On July 1st, 1941, Bulova ran the first legal TV ad. I was going to play the video of this for you guys, but it's on YouTube, and I can, if you Google it or just go on YouTube, you can actually see the actual ad. It's pretty amazing. It's a shaky 10-second spot. There's no video. It's just this image, and then about 15 seconds or 5 seconds or so through the ad, a gentleman basically says, "America runs on Bulova time." We've come a long way. How much do you think this cost? Actually, a little bit more history. This ad ran right before a Phillies versus Dodgers game. And the cost was $9. 10 seconds. I don't remember the last time I saw a 10-second ad, and I can definitely tell you $9 is perhaps off by some zeros today. So what's the breakdown? It costs $4 for airtime and $5 for station charges. The commercial only reached a few thousand people because at the time, there were only 4,000 TV sets in all of the state of New York. So now let's fast forward to the 1950s. Americans were feeling pretty optimistic about the future. The credit card was introduced in 1958. More consumer trouble. People were buying appliances. There were more and more consumer goods that were helping people save time, and hence they had more time for leisure. And they wanted to spend on different consumer goods. They were being influenced by advertising. The total US billings more than doubled between 1950 from 5.7 billion to over 12 billion in 1960. The number of agencies proliferated as well. And all of this was mainly due to the growth of TV. Nielsen, who at the time owned the radio ratings, this is also the time that they introduced TV ratings, way back in 1950. And that metric hasn't changed a lot. For over 50 years, it's been the currency for audience measurement. And when advertisers could finally measure who they were reaching with their ads, the golden age, the golden era of TV advertising really began. So it seems like a match made in heaven. The ability to create a multi-sensory experience, reach vast audiences with cost-effective ways of reaching a huge audience. And where are we now? Any guesses? So in 2012, the US advertising spend, which started at the humble beginnings of 200 million back in 1880, has grown to $139 billion. This is for US alone. Pretty incredible figure. And not surprisingly, most of that spend is still on the traditional mediums. It's still on print, it's still on TV. So the Industrial Revolution standardized manufacturing. Marketers had a powerful way to reach consumers. TV measurement emerged, national brands emerged. Advertising industry became big business and everyone was happy. Over the years, marketers and advertisers have become extremely sophisticated. While there are enormously diverse mediums and varying strategies and tactics, they also share some commonalities. Until the emergence of the web, advertising has actually been a bit of a black hole. It's been largely a one-way communication. Lots of fuzzy metrics, loose targeting. Questionable ways of measuring impact, purchase intent, action, or when it is measurable, it's quite delayed. It's measured maybe annually, quarterly, nothing real time, no two-way communication. And this is really what the power of digital brings us. Despite all these challenges, brands really reign supreme. They influence our thinking. We have affinities that we're not even aware of. Just think about your day from the moment you woke up to now. Think of all the different brands you interacted with, everything from what coffee you prefer, where you prefer to get your gas, what kind of toothpaste brand you use. We're just surrounded by brand affinities, and it's done so well, we don't even know it. Despite all these challenges, the power of brands is really well understood. They influence our choice, they drive pricing power, loyalty, trust. Let's use a simple example. We have two different soaps. They're both carried at the same discount retailer. And as you can see, the price in absolute terms may not seem like a big difference, but there is a price premium. Now let's look at another soap, a more luxury brand, Molton Brown. And it has an unbelievable 1,400% price premium. I'm pretty sure the ingredients aren't that much more expensive. The brand is, though. This trend plays out in virtually every CPG category in the world. So with all things, change remains the constant. After 50 years of business as usual, 1994 arrived. Something big was happening. No one really understood it, nor could we have dreamt a wilder dream. By 1994, an estimated 12 million people had discovered the World Wide Web. And then, in October 1994, something extraordinary happened. AT&T paid the site Hotwired for this ad. The very first banner ad. It was hard-coded into the site, an astonishing 44% click-through rate. Very, very different from the click-through rates we see today. And it was the way they tracked it was through the log files. They literally looked through all the log files to find references for that JPEG click. So the first ad analytic tool was just a plain old highlighter. And the web evolved. 1994 with Yahoo. I'm sure some of you remember this. MSN back in 95. Google with the impressive 25 million pages indexed back in 98. Pretty different now. And let's fast forward to today. Where now we have very immersive ads. Ads that really relate to all of our senses, where we can interact, we can see. It's a whole different experience, coming a long, long way from that very first ad that was ran back in 94. So from these humble beginnings, we have the start of a new revolution, a revolution that took the world by storm. It has virtually improved every dimension of our lives. No signs of slowing, transforming the way we work, we play, we communicate, we consume, the way we live, with unprecedented tools on the horizon. Yet as we consume content more and more in digital, TV and offline still have a lion's share and disproportionate percentage of advertising budgets. Here are some of the recent stats that Mary Meeker shared. As you can see, there's a gap between time spent and ad spend. The TV advertising industry is a $350 billion opportunity globally. And as history tells us, consumers tend to lead the way and advertisers follow. And there's simply just a huge, huge opportunity that lies ahead of us with digital becoming the premium medium for brands. The reason for this gap And the challenges in bridging it is how quickly consumer behaviors have changed. I remember when I was a kid, we would all sit around the TV with my family and we would watch TV shows like The Cosby Show or The Wonder Years, and we'd all be in it together. We'd know what night, what days, what hours, we'd all watch it together. Now, the way we consume is so different. We might still all be on the couch, but we also have our other screens with us. And we're constantly consuming content on multiple screens. During the recent Super Bowl, 2/3 of people were using a second screen to consume content during the game. And a whopping 23% used the second screen the entire game. 91% of us sleep with our phones. I'm trying to work on that. 77% of TV viewers use another's device at the same time. We're just engaging on the go. We're using our smartphones, shopping on our tablets. Advertisers cannot afford to miss this opportunity. They need to connect with their ideal consumers. And they need to go where the eyeballs are, where the people are. The status quo is just not enough. The fact that TV measurement has been the currency for 50+ years and TV still dominates the lion's share of advertising spend, this is all about to change, because advertisers will always follow the consumers. And the big picture is even more interesting. Technology is evolving rapidly. People are checking their mobile phones 126 times a day. There's never been a more personal computing device. And cross-device campaigns are rapidly emerging. Ability to track consumers across the entire purchase funnel. Ability to really understand in real time how is it that you're impacting consumers once they see your ad, once they see your message. What are the behaviors that shift? The next wave of ad tools and metrics will simply blow your mind. There will be no more fuzzy metrics, no more abstract concepts of ROI, no more guessing. There's going to be a seismic shift in the advertising reality. We are about to witness the birth of new currencies, new pricing models. And new currencies don't happen very frequently. As I said, the last one was back in 1950. This is really an exciting time and a truly transformative time. Unlike the early days of TV, digital advertising is already incredibly measurable. The only problem is a very old and well-known one. The standardized metrics today largely consist of clicks and conversions, and that's not entirely useful. If you're a brand advertiser, what you really want to know is, who did I reach? Did they see my ad? What did they think? Oops. I actually didn't want to play volume for this. There we go. I'll spare you guys the cheesy song for the video. So the digital metrics, they just don't translate to brands. It's not about clicks and conversions. It's about a journey. The brand journey is a long one. It's one that first you want to reach the right audience so they're aware of you. Then you want to reach them enough that they have affinity towards you, that they have a preference towards you. And then down the cycle, when it comes to the moment where they need to take action, you want to be the brand that's top of mind for them. That can't be measured with just simple clicks and conversions. It's a longer journey that we need to be able to measure. So I want to share with you now Google's vision around measurement. Our vision is that there needs to be new metrics in place for measuring the effectiveness of brand advertising. Our vision goes across 3 key pillars. The very first is around reaching the right audience. This means, are you reaching the right audience, and do they actually view your message? Second is, once you have reached them, how is it that you're impacting perceptions and behaviors? What is the lift you see in consumer behaviors as a result of them seeing your ad, seeing your message? And ultimately, how is it that this impacts sales and ROI? And of course, in the world that we live in, everything we do needs to work across all screens. It's not a view that's based on a screen, it's a view that needs to be based on a user, a single user that interacts with all the different mediums. And of course, it needs to work globally. What's exciting is that there's also been a lot of great moves in the industry around measurement. The Making Measurement Make Sense initiative is an effort driven by the IAB, the ANA, the 4As, the MRC, and of course, Google is also a key participant around really defining what are the key standards that we are going to have in place as these new currencies emerge. And one thing that's critical is that for any currency to be effective, you need it to work for both sides, for publishers and for advertisers. And Google's perspective is that every single metric that we develop around making brand advertising effective will work for both advertisers as well as publishers. And while our vision encompasses quite a few products, today we're just talking about viewability. Arguably the most important 4 letters in advertising: viewability, viewable impressions, cost per view. We've already discussed our uncanny sense of sight and its disproportionate role in first impressions. Let us remember, however, that we need to move from the cognitive unconscious to the conscious, from the subtle and unnoticed impressions flooding us to the actionable. This is the path we need to lead the consumers down for our ads to be effective, to convert them from prospects to customers. To accomplish this, we need to be seen. It's the fundamental. If your ad's not seen, there is absolutely no shot at anything else down the funnel. Our attempts at reaching consumers with all the different tools, etc., none of this matters if it goes completely unseen. What if I told you there was an ad placed directly under your seat? You can check. Would you pay for this ad? Guess what? Today you just can't measure. There are lots of ads that are placed in equivalently inappropriate locations. And this is what viewability is all about. Now let's talk about online ad impressions. In 2005, there were 1 trillion online ads served, to nearly 6 trillion in 2012. I can't even imagine 6 trillion. It's just an unimaginable figure. The shift to viewable changes this number. This should give you a sense of the magnitude of this impact. Impressions are the basis and denominator for many, many metrics. And we're about to take a viewable slice into impressions. We will no longer simply measure impressions, but we will concern ourselves with what percentage of those have actually been viewed. This is indicative of many impressions today, or a certain percentage of impressions today. The problem is that we just don't know which ads are seen. The tools simply don't exist today. Let's think of traditional ads for a moment. Think of the last time you watched a show and there was a TV ad, last time you grabbed a magazine and there were ads. There's some ads you flip through, some catch your eye, some you really look at, some you ignore. Some TV ads you listen to and intrigue you, some you mute and you walk away. Advertisers just don't have any idea of how the consumers react to their ads today. And it's simply because the mediums can't afford to measure that. With digital, we're going to make this shift. Digital will enable a two-way communication between advertisers and consumers. Today, there's been no conversation. It's just been a blast. It's been a mere blast at consumers and a guess at the results. Brand marketers' full potential can be realized when they are empowered and fully engaged with their customers. And that revolution is happening now, driven by our emerging ad technologies. The move to a world where brand marketers pay only for display ad impressions that are actually viewed by people, as opposed to impressions that users may never scroll to or may never see, or maybe in the background. This promises a dramatic and positive sea change for our industry. The current viewability definition is a standard that the Making Measurement Makes Sense working group is working on. This standard will span across all ad formats, with display ad formats being defined at least 50% of an ad being viewed for at least 1 second, and a similar definition is in development for video ads as well. We're moving to a common definition and a common standard. Google's technology for viewable impressions is Active View, and this shows you a quick video demo of what Active View does. This means that we focus on the users and what's in browser. So whether the user is scrolling, whether something comes into view, this is measured in real time, and it's measured across all screens. We know from our early experience with major brands, ones that typically tend to issue digital for TV, that they love the move to viewable impressions. It increases their trust in digital marketing and ensures them that they're going to get what they paid for, an ad that is actually viewed by their target audience. Widespread adoption of viewable impressions as a standard will exponentially increase brands' confidence and willingness to invest in digital. At the same time, the move to viewable impressions will limit online inventory. Once we begin to measure viewable impressions, inventory will change dramatically. Not all impressions are equal, and viewability will invoke the laws of supply and demand, which are conspicuously absent today. Inventory is unlimited when no one is measuring it. The beneficiaries of increased brand investment and finite inventory from high-quality publishers, large and small, the ones that truly deliver a great experience for end users. A virtuous cycle will continue. This is unambiguously a good thing for the digital world. And now that viewable technology exists, marketers are also able to derive insights into their campaigns, focusing on the impressions that actually matter. When advertisers get a more accurate picture of how their creatives are performing, they're able to focus on the campaigns and the placements that are truly performing the best. And publishers can use the same insights to achieve the best return on their inventory that has the best value zoomed in on viewability. For example, in our Google Viewability pilot, many mobile ads have proved to be more viewable than desktop, suggesting that this inventory has been undervalued. Furthermore, from our pilots, we have seen that viewability stays consistent throughout the day. While people are 50% more likely to click on ads between 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. than they are from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. You can optimize your ads a myriad of specific dimensions that could greatly increase ad effectiveness in real time. Some of our more exciting discovery has also been around the buried treasure of the display world. We have found that as many as 72% of below-the-fold ads eventually become viewable. Oops. Imagine as an advertiser being able to customize your campaigns using the underutilized inventory, and for publishers being able to accurately price towards viewability rather than just page location. And then more importantly, we also see that just using click-through rates as a proxy, that click-through rates for below-the-fold viewable ads are comparable to above-the-fold. What this really means is that content is ultimately king. Sites that are engaging, where users are engaged with the content and they're scrolling, they're also more likely to engage with the ads, regardless of where they're placed, and more focused on the content quality. Many are evangelizing this change, a change towards viewable impressions. However, there's still progress that's needed. A real-time, frictionless marketplace requires a currency, an agreed-upon unit of measure, one that can give the market confidence, one in which the underlying value is agreed upon. And if history tells us is that every period of significant economic change, new forms of currency are required. In the transition from agricultural-based economics to industrialized free market, economic systems, new financial systems, and the resulting standardization of currency was required. The move to the gold standard, the move from the gold standard to the fiat currencies fueled unprecedented global prosperity. Just as the next phase of online growth will require implementing a new currency. When it comes to the V word, viewability, we're still in a primitive economy. Everyone is still valuing their merchandise independently. There is no common language, nor a way to compare metrics across vendors. Simply put, publishers, brands, and ad tech vendors are not yet able to value, buy, sell, optimize, and measure viewable impressions across platforms with confidence. And to achieve a common currency, we need to have an agreed upon definition and standard. And this is a definition and standard that Google is very much supporting, that's being proposed by the 3MS Making Measurement Make Sense initiative. With a standard definition in place, there are two important aspects that come into focus: transparency and actionability. Just as common accounting standards and disclosure statements are required to enable investors to assess key financials and metrics in order to determine value accordingly, transparency in the viewable impression currency is also critical. Both marketers and publishers need access to the same core set of metrics to enable them to sell inventory and buy campaigns with symmetry. We need to be transparent with each other, to agree upon standards, to cooperate for our mutual benefit in this rapidly evolving environment. The second major requirement is actionability. Metrics are most useful when they are real-time. A key element of a successful currency is the ability to make buying and selling decisions with certainty at the moment of transaction. That is actionability. Imagine a world where prices and quantities for goods and services are negotiated and adjusted post-transaction. That will be complete chaos. If viewability just becomes another after-the-fact report, it's really selling digital short. Because we have access to these metrics, there is no technical barrier for us to have access to these metrics, measure them in real time, and make actions and decisions in real time. It's critical that we build viewability metrics into our ad buying, selling, and trading systems, and make sure that it's easily integrated and seamlessly integrated into our existing technical solutions. So in closing, from our abstract discussion on our senses and the flood of impressions we confront every millisecond, every day, we now have arrived at a profound realization. What ancient civilization knew and understood from 4000 BCE has not evolved much. They knew that painting on cave walls for their friends, family, tribal men, that their message was being communicated, that it was enduring. This is almost identical to outdoor advertising today, and pretty similar to even TV today. We've known since the beginning of time that our survival relied on our highly attuned sense of sight, and that physiologically we have dedicated more than 50% of our neural tissue to this singular purpose. Ancient hunting parties knew this, just as modern marketers know this. What we see deeply influences us, moves us, arouses us. It's the gateway through which we perceive the world, through which we experience life, through which we interpret our surroundings. And in the mere millisecond, you have formed dozens of impressions. Our sense of sight and the human brain far exceeds the capabilities of any supercomputer. Yet brand advertisers and marketers may not even have a single millisecond. Today we know little more than our ancient cave drawings. We've not attempted to measure what is viewed in a meaningful way. This is largely owing to the inherent limitations of the available advertising mediums. We simply created the most appealing advertisements and disseminated it as widely as possible. Digital technologies are changing every facet of life, enabling the unimaginable, perhaps even transforming the human species. The impact to modern marketing and advertising is no less significant. As an industry, we need to agree to a standard, a currency that provides transparency and actionability, the ability to affect campaigns in real time, and to benefit both advertisers and publishers. As simple as this sounds, it is unprecedented. An ad that goes entirely unseen is not afforded even a precious millisecond. The impression, cognitive unconscious, transition to the conscious, and ultimate action are all irrelevant. Without being seen, this initially subconscious and eventually very conscious cycle never begins. Unnoticed and non-existent. Viewability is really the basis of everything. And in the future, all impressions will simply be viewed. With that, I'd like to open it up for any questions you guys may have. I think there's a couple of mics in the middle. Yep.
In regards to transparency, is there a way to standardization, almost how much information should we collect from the user and what we do with that information? Because that's a big ethical thing right now with Facebook and everything. So is there some sort of policing or on to monitor how companies are using our information?
That's a great question. There is definitely privacy is a key right that consumers have. The key to privacy is around what information is identified with a user's identity. So as long as information is not actually associated with a user ID, those are some of the golden rules that we tend to follow. So for example, with our viewable technology, what we focus on is just measuring that impression and its viewability and looking at it holistically from the slice of an impression and not the slice of a user. So there are a lot of key boundaries of what is actually tied across different user identities. And that's a great question and something that everybody in the advertising industry needs to be cognizant of is how the different pieces of data are actually connected together so that you're able to derive personally identifiable information. Any other questions?
So I don't know if you'll have an answer for this, but like you had a very strong presence about how viewability is affecting how we see and our impressions. And I was wondering, for people who can't see, right? Mm-hmm. Have maybe you considered any opportunities there on how we could affect their lives as well with brands?
That is that's a great question. Clearly, the second sense after sight is hearing, and that is, actually, radio advertising precedes TV advertising clearly, and so that's been one of the more common mediums for reaching people that don't have a sense of sight. And with digital, it's multisensory. So even if you can't see, there's still the hearing aspect. And many of the digital solutions today are accessible for people that don't have a sense of sight. I don't have a great answer for that. Viewable impressions is limited to viewability by definition. I guess there should be hearable impressions too, perhaps. Yeah, no standard that I'm aware of. I know that for the video definition of viewable impressions, we are actually looking at whether sound should be incorporated or not, since sight, sound, and motion, the combination is so critical for video ads in particular. But that's as far as it's gone. Any other questions?
Hey, I just wanted to clarify. You showed us this example of a browser and the demonstration of the program. But just because somebody's scrolling around doesn't necessarily mean maybe they look at that display ad. How does that exactly work?
Absolutely. So that is a great question. So this topic, so there's a few aspects. One of the key aspects around viewable impressions is it's really zooming in on does an impression have the opportunity to be viewed? And so based on a lot of analysis and data gathering, that's how we derived at an ad being viewed for at least 50% of an ad for at least 1 second. However, there is clearly more than that than just having the opportunity to be viewed. Once an ad has an opportunity to be viewed, then it actually comes down to the creative. So once the creative can relate to the consumer, that's where you see much richer engagement metrics. That's where you see us go beyond just viewing to actually interacting, whether it's a mouse hover or video play, clicks, etc. So that's the distinction between the two, is that right now we want to establish a currency that can help establish the value of the placements, and that is independent from the quality of the creative or the brand, etc. And so that's the distinction, is it's really a different perspective on what the core unit of impressions should mean.
So you mentioned a currency,
Yeah.
and I was wondering what kind of specifics you could get into in terms of what metrics will be available to publishers
Yeah.
on what placements on their sites
Yeah.
tend to do well, what are above the fold, what tend to be viewed, not just the advertisers.
Absolutely, that is a great question. So actually everyone's asking great questions. One, I should say randomly, someone told me never to say a great question. I don't know why I keep saying it. It's just like bad habit. Everyone's asking great questions. A publisher perspective is super, super critical. We are building solutions that can enable us to derive a few different insights. So for example, today, a lot of the viewability solutions, they're provided to publishers after the fact. So the advertisers get, for example, a verification report, and the publishers get it, and they're kind of blindsided. What we are doing is we want to build the reporting real time so that the publishers get the insights in real time by the different dimensions that make sense for their inventory. And then more importantly, once you have enough historical data, then we also want to invest in tools for optimizing towards viewability. So this implies things like understanding what are the placements that are most likely to be viewable, how can you forecast and target and serve with viewability in mind. There are interesting insights that we're just analyzing around what are the different placements, is it different verticals, is there different times of day or different demographics that tend to have different viewabilities. Nothing concrete I can share at the moment, but it is a very interesting exercise to see what is it that actually drives and optimizes for viewability, and having these tools for our publishers is absolutely top of mind for us. Any other questions? Maybe one last question? Okay. Thank you, everyone.